This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome to the next amazing episode of The Healthy Healer. And I'm excited for today's show. We have a great guest today, someone who has been on hundreds of podcasts in her own right, and someone who really speaks to transforming life from the ground up, like really getting access to what does it mean to get a new life, and what is a pathway to getting a life that is entirely different than the one you might have if it's not working. So Ann Hince is our guest today, and Ann has a personal story of actually changing her life from the ground up and doing so through some mechanism techniques that she discovered that really helped her create an entirely new life from the one that wasn't working for her. And without me speaking and maybe even putting my foot in my mouth and perhaps saying something not entirely consistent with where Ann was headed for, I'm now going to take time to introduce you to our tonight's esteemed guest, Ann Hince. Ann, welcome to The Healthy Healer. It's really fabulous to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Dr. Fred. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You said you had listened to a podcast or two of mine, and that's great. And you might have become aware that I'd like to start off the show with a simple 9-letter question. And that question can be very informative and somewhat daunting at times for some people. Other times it's just a perfect icebreaker. It's 9 letters. It's an easy one to say and an easy one to spell, and it's not so easy to answer all the time. And that is, Ann Hince, who are you?
Okay, yeah, there's lots of ways we can go with the answer to that kind of question. And I'd possibly further down, we can talk about it, that there's a different way I can go. But in general, I'm just like anybody else. I'm no one special, but I have developed some abilities that I did not know were possible before. So I can do some pretty powerful things inside of myself. I can focus with my tension inside and release it just using the power of my focuser. So I can release adhesions in the connective tissue. I've shifted my skull bones. So I can do that kind of thing now that I didn't know was possible before. So I'm someone who's sharing that information because if I didn't know it, I think most other people didn't know it. So
probably most of us aren't readily aware that can happen. And it isn't how we're taught. It isn't how we're trained, certainly not in standard Western civilian society to really believe that we can do that. But you're talking about something very profound. You're talking about the power of attention, it sounds like, the power of really paying attention to areas of our life or areas of our inside or our existence, like how we see the world, and in the process, actually altering that in a way that might optimize it. It might give us a better chance to have a life that works. Am I right about that? And if I am, please continue. And if I'm not, please correct me.
Okay, this is where I am now, but it's not where I started. I started just being so overwhelmed I was just so reactionary, had complex PTSD from my childhood and finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor and multiple different traumas over the years. And I was just so afraid all the time. I was a very scared mother, and I just got to the place where I had to do something about it because I just couldn't continue the same way. So it started with me working through my emotions and my memories and my traumas from the past. And I did that with a technique called EFT, which is short for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's also called tapping because we're tapping on our body in certain places as we talk something through. So I'm using words and memories and stories at that place. I didn't have much self-awareness at that point. If someone asked me how I felt, I wouldn't know because I'd suppressed everything for so long. And so, I was really good at it. But working with this technique and going back through my childhood traumas and tapping through them one at a time over and over again until the emotions had dissipated, that started to develop my self-awareness. As my subconscious mind opened up, my self-awareness went deeper.
Interesting. So that's very interesting. So tapping and EFT, which are one and the same, it sounds like, and getting access to doing that is what you utilize to really unbind stored traumas that were being like what contained in certain areas or certain pockets of your existence. And by letting that go, you're able to go deeper into your life. You're able to get a new level of self-awareness that most of us probably haven't experienced. Is that fair to say?
So self-awareness is on a spectrum. It starts with words and stories, right? We all can remember, we can tell a story about something that happened in our childhood, but we aren't necessarily able to connect into the emotions from that. But as we do this work, we can connect to the emotions. And then the next level of self-awareness that I realized was that there's a level of physical sensations underneath the emotions. So if we have an emotion such as frustration, we're actually using that word to describe how we're holding tension in our body. Now, we say, I'm frustrated when we feel that particular way. So I became aware of those physical sensations. So then at that point, I didn't need to use EFT as much. And I actually just felt the feelings, which again, it sounds easy to say, but it takes some practice to do because we're so used to just suppressing our feelings.
So in the suppression of our feelings, we get these physical sensations, and then we put these labels on them of what the usually uncomfortable experience might be about those physical sensations. Like we're frustrated, or maybe that we're angry, or that we regret, or that we're afraid, or that we're jealous. Some of the things that we have that are negative in their negative, at least in their vibration, and unpleasant in their experiential component. You have it that you can bypass the need for tapping in EFT once you become truly aware of what those physical sensations represent with respect to how one's living their life, with respect to the suppressed realities that are stuck in those little pockets that create the sense of anxiety, or create a sense of depression, or create a sense of despair, or post-traumatic anxiety, post-traumatic concerns, or regrets, etc. Are all of these sort of experiences, are they pocketed away? Are they just stuffed away in certain areas of our body? And when tapped or realized, they become unleashed and move on their merry way? Or how does it happen that we get access to a grander self by unleashing and unlatching we'll say the pockets, I guess there's a better word, but the areas where these emotions are being inappropriately stored?
They are really in specific places, but most of the time we're not aware of that, right? Our awareness hasn't gone deeper to actually focus on the place where the tension is held itself. But we'll have a general feeling like frustration for me is across my solar plexus, my lower rib area. And if you think about where you hold frustration, you might be able to come aware of it. Now, it probably is a specific place, but all we can do to begin with is just focus on the sensations that we're feeling ourselves. Most of the time we try and avoid the sensations, right? If we're feeling anxious, we'll take a drug, or we'll have a drink, or we'll do something. It's hard to actually sit in the feeling itself, but it's just calling for our attention, right? It's like pain. Pain is just calling for our attention. So if we give it the attention that it's asking for, it will release. It's just hard to do that. And sometimes we don't spend enough time. We don't give it enough time, but through my years of using EFT, my ability to focus had been honed. So I was able to focus and just feel those sensations intently enough that they would release. I'd often have to do it again and again, right? Think the thought that had the emotion, right? Maybe I'm afraid of making a phone call, right? So if I can think that thought, okay, I don't want to make this phone call because I'm afraid of what will happen. If I feel that fear, give it the attention it's asking for, let it release, and then think the thought again, okay, I'm afraid of making this phone call. Feel it again, and do that over and over until the fear has dissipated, at which point it's easy to make the phone call, right? That's how life changes, because things that you'd be holding yourself back with, you can allow just to release by this work.
Interesting. So most of the things that get released are negative vibration, uncomfortable experiences that are holding us back from living the life that we could live without them. Is that fair to say that most of these things are created or naturally self-fabricated or self-manifested, self-created obstacles or hurdles that prevent us from living the life that we could otherwise live if they weren't existing? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we're not being our true self because all this tension, all these emotions, the traumas, everything that we were programmed with in childhood, it just stays inside of us as tension. And it's affecting us now in the present and it's affecting us in the future. So to change our future, we want to change our present. So if we go inside and we actually look at our past, we look at those traumas, the big ones, the little ones, the humiliations, the embarrassments, if we let the energy that's stuck inside of them go, then we are a different person. And we're going to be a different person in the future as well, because we attract our future based on who we are now.
All right. So basically, what you're saying is by shifting the way that we're personalizing our internal experience through these negative filters of frustration or anxiety, regret, anger, anything troubling or unpleasant or undesirable, any of those physical feelings, which represent trapped emotions that are not being allowed to escape, and then releasing these emotions creates an opportunity for a level of freedom to go out and actually do that which these things are preventing us from doing otherwise. Fair?
Yes, absolutely. So let me go into the last step in my journey because some of that will become clear. So when I was doing this work, feeling my feelings rather than EFT, right, one day I was laying on the sofa and I was bringing some memory to mind and just allowing the sensations to release. And at some point, I could put my awareness inside my body and leave it there. And I didn't know what I was doing. It felt really weird. I'd never heard of it before, but I started to play. I tried once, so I tried again and realized I could do it again. And then I could move my awareness around inside and I could find a place with tension versus a place with no tension, right? I could tell the difference. So then I would focus on this place with tension, doing the same thing, focusing on it, not trying to change it in any way, just giving it the attention it was calling for. And it would release a little bit. And then I would do it again and again till it was released. Now, it took me many months. I was working through my torso, but eventually I got my awareness inside my head. And that was huge because there was so much pain and tension inside my left cheek that I had not been aware of my whole life. It'd been there the whole life. I was born with my right foot up against my right shin and my whole body was taut. And I think it started from my left cheek. So at that point, I realized how much pain and tension we store inside in our subconscious mind because we're not aware of it until we're aware of it. But it's so much there. There is so much there we don't know about. And that's the darkness, that's tension. I can sense inside, or I can see light versus darkness. So I know all the tension, all these negative emotions, all these negative memories are stored as tension or darkness inside. And as it releases, it dissipates. And underneath it's light. So all we have to do is find that darkness, find the tension that's stored inside, which is from these emotions and these past, the programming and the traumas and everything, and release that energy so that the light, our true self underneath all this darkness, shines through.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Now, are you one to believe, maybe it's more than believe, maybe that some of this comes from even past lives from prior to birth, that some of this tension shows up in this present three-dimensional world as a function of previous lives or maybe karmic level experiences that exist even as we enter this domain? Is that part of what's going on here, or is that not exactly what?
I don't know that yet. What I do know is in the early years of doing this work, when I would focus on tension inside and it would release, a memory would pop into my mind, right? A place memory of where something happened. So I knew that tension was from at some point when I had these memories. But now I'm working inside the bones, inside of my jaw and my tooth roots and my palate. And at that point, there's no memory that pops in my mind. So I think I'm releasing tension at this point, which is prior to verbalization and prior to me maybe being able to see, I'm not sure. So who knows how far back it goes.
It's pretty interesting as well. So this is really interesting, of course, for lots of reasons. Number one, it flies against what we know inside the conventional medical system, for instance, and how to treat pain, how to treat discomfort, how to treat imbalance, how to treat misery, how to maybe manage suffering And what you're suggesting here is that we have access inside of our own unique self to use EFT or to use that form of tapping, or even in the more advanced stage, to simply become aware of who we are through acknowledging. It sounds like your pathway required EFT to get you to the level of self-awareness that you are now. Start acknowledging the places where things are being stored and are causing us to be stuck being that which we aren't, that are not our true self. And then by using these techniques of paying attention or of tapping or whatever form of EFT-like interventions that we design for ourselves, we can release these obstacles and get a life that really works, that is more consistent, genuine, authentic to who we know our core self to be.
Let me add one thing, because you have medical background, I think, a lot more than me. What I realized when I put my awareness inside my cheeks and I was first working inside of there, I was focusing on tension and I actually heard and felt something release. And it sounded and it felt old fabric ripping. So it was at that point I actually went home. I was a little concerned of what I was doing inside. But I did some research and I realized it was an adhesion in the connective tissue that was releasing. So that's what I'm looking through. I believe I'm looking through the connective tissue as I'm looking throughout my body. So I can tell where I am in a 3D space. But I can't tell what I'm in, except for bone. Bone is more dense. But I can't tell whether I'm in an organ, although where I am in a 3D space could be an organ or should be an organ. Doesn't feel any different to where I'm looking through. So that's what helped me realize that I think that is the connective tissue that I'm looking through. So that's where I believe we hold all this tension.
Inside the connective tissues. Now, is there anything that we can do? What kind of other things can we do for ourselves as far as learning how to pay focal attention on areas of life or areas of our body or areas of our personal experience that can radically adjust how the world is occurring to us? I noticed in your bio, you have several mentions of contemplative meditation or mindfulness. Where does that fit into this whole theory or this whole game that you're playing?
Yeah, I'm not really much for meditation. People think what I do is a little bit like meditation. To me, meditation felt a little bit like a waste of time because I really like to be busy. I like to be doing something. And so I'm focusing inside. So I'm not thinking, but I'm sensing. So that's something along the way. It's not something I was able to do to begin with. So to me, EFT is the first step for someone to learn. But even before that, the first step that anyone has to be able to do is notice when they're becoming emotional, right? Start asking yourself during the day, how am I feeling right now? Or notice when you're being triggered by something. Stand back and say, oh, look at me. I'm starting to get frustrated or angry or whatever. Because until you can notice that, you can't do anything about it. So that's always the first step.
So where am I becoming emotional that is preventing me from living a life that is free and easy and consistent with who I know myself to be? Is that more the question, or is any kind of emotions? What if I'm becoming happy or pleased or excited or interested or curious or...
That's not the darkness, right? All we need to do is find the darkness. So it's negative emotions. It's when we're triggered by something. Right? When we're watching the news and something on there triggers us, it's likely to be a negative emotion. And that's what's stored inside. So if you learn EFT, right? My YouTube video is 6 minutes long. It's easy to learn EFT. It just takes a few minutes. When you're triggered, just do a little tapping. Tell yourself what it is you're feeling, your absolute truth. Maybe you're really pissed off with something, or maybe you're frustrated with someone. Just say those words to yourself. I'm frustrated with that person for doing what they did. And tap as you're saying it and allow the energy of that trigger to release so that you're back to peace, and then move on with your day and notice the next time. And as you notice more and more, because it becomes much easier to notice.
Now, I've noticed that each time you have simulated or given a sample of tapping, you start at the top of your head and you seem to be tapping in the exact same places. Are there particular sort of points on our body that deserve to be tapped in order to get this done? And is there a progression that naturally starts from the top of the head and goes down as you were just doing? Or is there a pathway? Or can I just tap my knee and my ankle and get it done? Or do I have to come through the whole body in a full body tapping sprint?
These are specific points, and each point is the end of a meridian system. So there's nine points. They're easy to learn. I tend to go down the body just because it's easy to learn the sequence of points that way. And you just do the same points each time over and over again.
And you said there's 9 of them?
Yeah, some people plus or minus 1 or 2. Some people add in different ones. But yeah, there's specific points.
And you're on the end of the actual meridians inside the acupuncture chart then? Is that what you're talking about when you say meridians? Like those are the ones?
Yes, right. Yes. There's many photos or images on anywhere on the internet about the points. Easy to find EFT tapping points.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Great. All right. Does this help with physical pain as well?
It does. And with physical pain, you're using the words as you're tapping to allow yourself to focus on the pain. So if the pain's maybe in my right shoulder, I would say, I can feel this pain right there in my right shoulder. It feels really intense. I can feel it right there. So you're using the words to allow your focus to go onto that pain in the right shoulder. Now, it can make the pain a little bit more intense to begin with because you're clearing away the chaff, the outer layers of subconsciousness, allowing you to open up and actually feel the pain, the pinpoint of the pain itself. Just keep that in mind.
Interesting. Very interesting. And when you're teaching other people how to do this, or when you're modeling or leading or facilitating groups or individuals on how to do this, what is it about the conversation that takes place that allows it to be lasting, that allows it to be something that people can be compelled to use when they're feeling uncomfortable into the future?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
Once we start doing this, we watch YouTube, we learn about the 9 points, and we start tapping and we get some relief. What is it that you do as a coach or a facilitator that helps people see how to use this even more effectively, or how to become aware of our bodily sensations and its equivalence to our emotional blockages, et cetera? How do you help people go from simple EFT/tapping to making this part of their everyday life?
Someone has to have the will and this desire to do it, right? But a lot of it is the words they use with EFT. Some people will start to think that they're using the wrong words, right? And then they'll stop. But it's hard sometimes to find our truth, but our truth is there. So I suggest people imagine they're giving me a phone call, right? Calling me and telling me what's going on. Those would be the words you use. So you've just got to keep going. For me, how it started was a doctor worked on me first. He tapped with me about my mother's death, but I didn't necessarily believe that it was like a real thing because it seemed too easy. So I had a 17-year-old cat at home at the time, and his kidneys were starting to fail, and I had to give him a daily saline shot, so an injection of saline solution. The first time I did that, my hand was shaking so badly. It was so scary for me because I hated injections. So I thought I'll just try it out on this simple thing right here. So I tapped about every aspect of it, which is something you do with EFT, right? So I tapped about my hand shaking. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat. And I tapped about all the injections I had over the years. And the next day, the needle slid right in. All that fear that had been living inside of me the day before had totally disappeared. So that was a really easy example, right? It was a little thing, but it had a huge impact, and it made me realize how powerful EFT really was. And it made me realize that all I have to do is get on the other side of those emotions, get on the other side of that fear. It's just energy stuck inside of my body. It can release. I just have to allow it to do that. So that's what I recommend.
Okay, great. And so this is something that is really useful in multiple different dimensions of life and many different areas where we feel pain or suffering or blocked or impeded, or where we have some hesitancy to proceed in a direction that's consistent with our honest to goodness, core, authentic, genuine self. That these techniques allow for that, allow for the disposal or the disappearance of the things that are in our way. That's what you're having here. And now you speak a couple times to your mom's death and finding her on the floor in the bathroom. Can you tell me a little bit how that actual event, which is it's a high-powered event, how that played into the cascade for you to get who you now become?
I didn't realize that I hadn't dealt with it. I guess on some level I did. I just didn't deal with it. I just carried on with life because that's what my family did, right? We never talked about anything. So I just carried on with life. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s and I was at this doctor's appointment and he recognized how stressed I was, given I was a stay-at-home mother with 2 young boys, right? My life wasn't that stressful, but I was stressed. And he asked me on a scale of 0 to 10 what my stress level was. And I said 8. And then he asked me why. And that's when I realized, oh, it was finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor when I was 19 because the tears from that event were still just under the surface 20 years later because I had not dealt with it. So this was the beginning of that unwinding of all those stored emotions.
All right. Okay, that's amazing. And I love the connection. It just makes so much sense that you've had these experiences and then you just want to disseminate it to others so that you can help people actually get the life that really they deserve. Now, you're pretty complex. You have a lot of things going on, as we talked about before the meeting. So if someone wants to learn a little bit more about you and how they can finally take care of the things that are in their way of living the life that they want, how would they get a hold of you?
You can get hold of me on my website, which is my name, annhince.com. And I've got the x-rays on there. So if you want to see how you can change your skull bones, that's on there. I'm very active on Facebook. So you can contact me on Facebook as well. And I've got a lot of videos on YouTube that go through all the different techniques in detail. So you're welcome to look there.
Okay, fabulous. And thank you so much for being a guest on The Healthy Healer. It's been a pleasure. Is there one thing you want to leave our audience with? One thing you think everybody should know about life that maybe you finally figured out and you would love to just let our audience, my audience and your audience, know a little bit?
I'd love to let them know that there is so much depth to life that we are not aware of until we've done this work.
Yeah.
A lot of people are depressed or don't think there's anything to life. There's nothing more than what's happening now. But if you do this work and you become aware of yourself at a deeper level, you're also aware of what's happening around you at a deeper level. And it makes life much more satisfying.
Fantastic. Love it. All right. Let's make sure that everyone hears that loud and clear. And thank you, everyone, for staying with us on The Healthy Healer. It's been a pleasure interviewing and then introducing Ann Hince to you. I hope you've had as much good time doing this as I have. And I look forward to catching you at the next episode of The Healthy Healer. And for now, time to say goodbye and good night. And we will catch you on the flip side. So bye for now. Love you all. Bye for now.